And I want to look at one specific one because it's educational. So let's look at this portion because this is a section of the dialogue that Anderson brings up in a comment that he posted on the YouTube video. So let's listen to the dialogue here. It's an hour. I just happen to be starting an hour, 13 minutes, and 45 seconds in, if you want to note such things. Here's what we got.
Of going to the original languages and going to the ancient codices, including the Greek Septuagint. I'm not sure what your position on that is. I've found some weird views amongst King James only folks. Do you believe that there was such a thing called the Greek Septuagint?
I think that it would be silly to think that the Old Testament had never been translated into Greek.
Right.
Okay, but that's not to say that what we have today is identical to the Greek New Testament that Jesus would have quoted from or the apostles would have quoted from. Because, you know, they say Christ and his apostles quoted from the Septuagint.
Right.
That's not to say that the manuscripts that exist today of the Septuagint are identical to what they would have had at that time. Because how many manuscripts are there of the Septuagint, and what centuries do they come from?
Well, it's about as earliest attestation is about the same as what we have for the New Testament. But
so we're talking like what, 4th century?
No, you can get a little bit earlier than that.
Okay, so a manuscript that you have of the Septuagint from the 3rd or 4th century, I'm not going to say that that's authoritative, but I'm certain that there were Greek translations of the Old Testament. It'd be silly to say that there weren't, but I'm not saying that it's extant in Greek.
So very quick question for you, because it'll help me to understand where you're coming from here. What was the ultimate authority for the apostles? Was it the Hebrew text?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think that we can sit here today in 2013 and know exactly, you know, what they had in front of them. You know, I don't think we can look at a Septuagint from the 3rd or 4th century and say, this document in our hand is exactly what they had. If you want to know what I believe that they had, you know, it was what's written in my King James Bible in the Old Testament section, but not in English, obviously in the languages that they were speaking.
Okay, then I have a question for you.
Okay.
And if you've never examined this, say, I'll get back to you on it.
Okay.
Okay, and we don't include it in anything. You've preached through...
I don't claim to know everything.
Okay, well, none of us do. You've preached through Hebrews 8, I would assume, and...
Absolutely. I have Hebrews 8 memorized.
Okay.
I can quote the chapter in the King James.
Okay, all right. Excellent. Did you compare the King James with Jeremiah 31?
You know, I don't think I've sat them both side by side and made that comparison, but I have obviously noticed that there are differences when you look at New Testament quotations of Old Testament passages. I've never put those two in particular side by side.
Okay, so
no, I've not.
In Hebrews chapter 8, there is this interesting phrase where in Hebrews it says, and he did not care for them. What's the King James?
He regarded them not, saith the Lord.
Okay, all right. And that's the end of the citation.
He continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord.
Did you compare? Yeah. Did you compare the King James from the Old Testament to that?
No, I'll get back to you on that.
Let me
because I'll look at it because I want to look at it and make sure that's really where it's coming from.
Let me tell you what it says. It says, but I was a husband to them. Now, there is a textual variant between the Greek Septuagint and the Hebrew Masoretic text.
I have to get back with you on that one.
Okay, but let me just make my point so you can understand it, so you can look it up for you. There is one slight letter difference between Gaal and Baal. Baal means Lord husband, and Gaal means to despise.
So you're saying they look similar, sort of like you showed joined and captives.
They're extremely similar and so it's easy to understand where the variant arose in the Masoretic text and the Greek Septuagint. My point is, the apostles of Jesus Christ quoted from a foreign language translation that had a variation from the original language and made a point based on it. That's something we got to think about.
Okay. All right.
So
all right. Now there's that. Now let's switch over to this. And you're going to have to I'll stop moving it so you can here's the comment, if you can blow that up or whatever it is, because you're missing a good portion of it here. I'll let you play with that for a moment. But I I guess yesterday or day before yesterday, Pastor Anderson commented on YouTube. 115:43 to 117:43 is the most telling part of this interview if you follow what James White is saying. He is saying that Hebrews 8:9 is a misquotation of Jeremiah 31:32 in the original. How can the book of Hebrews be the word of God if, according to James White, it has an error in the original? By saying that, he is not only attacking the English KJV, he is also attacking every Greek New Testament and every English Bible version. Because according to him, they're all wrong. According to him, they all misquote Jeremiah 31:32 by mistaking Baal for Gaal. This is an attack on the inspiration of the book of Hebrews. Now, I get the feeling that some of his folks may have said, "Hey, what about that? what's going on here?" And if that's his response, that's not a good response. Let's take a look at it in accordance and see what we've got here. Hebrews 8:9. Not like the covenant which I made with their fathers on the day I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt. For they did not continue in my covenant, and I did not care for them, says the Lord. Now, here's the relevant portion in the Greek, and the specific term, the specific phrase is right there. Kago applêsa auton. And I did not care for them. Literally, and I neglected them. To reject, to not care for. Now, what's interesting, and this is where I don't even begin to understand Anderson's response. Let's look at the New Testament textual part here, and let's go to Hebrews 8:9. And if you look over here in the NA27 apparatus, nothing relevant. There's nothing there. It goes to 8:10. And there's no discussion in Metzger, no discussion in Comfort. And if I open up, let me see here if I can, that's not what I want there. Let's close this up here. Let's just go over to presentation here. And here is the Byzantine text. I'll blow it up and go over to Hebrews 8:9. And look at that. Applêsa. I've checked the Scrivener's TR. Here's the Byzantine text. Guess what they all say? Applêsa. And if we go to the Old Testament here, and we look at the Greek Septuagint, there is applêsa. And here is the Hebrew. And notice what we have when it comes to the textual variant. And yeah, it's almost big enough to see there. Let me see if I can blow it up just a little bit more. Okay, there we go. This is right down here is the BHS apparatus, Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia apparatus. It's the textual critical material, the notes for the Hebrew text of Jeremiah 31:32. And in 31:32, right here, Baalti. You've heard of the Baals, B-A-A-L, Baal, all right? Baal means Lord, and it can also mean husband. And so here you have Baal in the Hebrew, but then you have a little A down here. We need to go back to, there we go. We have a little A right here, and that gives us a variant. The Fraktur letter G is the Greek Septuagint, of course. And then we have ἀμέλησα. And then it's giving us, well, where would ἀμέλησα come from? And then there's a question mark after ga'alti. Ga'al means to reject or to neglect, but I neglected them. And notice, here is the first letter, is a bait for the Baal, and here it's Gimel with the Dagesh. Both have the Dagesh. So the Gimel and the Baal, the bait, look very much alike. And the rest of the word's all the same. And so there is a one-letter difference between the two. And so what you've got is the Greek Septuagint contains a tradition, pretty much as far as I can tell, and well, isn't that smart? Well, I've got more than one of them, so I am going to remember next time. Sorry. I do not have my Rahlf's Septuagint with the critical apparatus right behind me. I have more than one in the other room, and I will remember to bring that in sometime in the future. But I imagine somewhere in here I might have... Yeah. Why would that be in 2nd Esdras? That's interesting. I'm not sure why that went there. Let's see what that has. Well, that ain't helping me much either. I will have to look and see if there are any variants listed in regards to Jeremiah 31:32. But let me just... Yeah, that didn't do anything there. What you've got here is the Septuagint going back to a Hebrew tradition from which it was translated that had Ga'al instead of Baal. And that's what the writer of the Hebrews quotes. Now, that's just reality. That's just... sometimes people will get mad at me because I simply tell them the truth, because I show them things that they're uncomfortable with. We go back to what he said here, and I don't have time to change it, but if you follow what James White is saying, he is saying that Hebrews 8:9 is a misquotation of Jeremiah 31:32. That's not what I'm saying. I didn't say that. What I said was the apostles quoted a foreign language translation of the New Testament called the Septuagint. And the Septuagint manuscripts from which they quoted came from a Hebrew that said Ga'al, not Baal. That's reality. And his own King James recognizes it. His own King James has one reading in Jeremiah 31:32 and a different reading in Hebrews 8:9. And he doesn't explain what the difference between the two is. Here's the problem with King James Onlyism. It doesn't allow you to explain. You just have to sit back and go, well, that's just the way it is. That's how God inspired it. I can explain, well, there's this little letter difference here, and you had Hebrew manuscripts in the past that had a Ga'al, and if the apostles are using that, then that would be the one to go with, wouldn't it? Oh, but I'm uncomfortable with that. Well, I'm sorry. It's pretty clear to me that that was relevant to the apostles' citation of the text. Was the variant. Now, you can bury your head in the sand, and you can put on your tradition hat and do whatever else you want to do. It's not going to change the fact that that's where it came from, and your own King James just simply ignores it. And in fact, if you're King James only, you take the position he's taken, you can't deal with this. You can't answer questions about this. And there are folks out there who attack our faith that know about these kinds of things. And if your tradition and your theology won't allow you to even acknowledge the existence of these things and to deal with them in a meaningful fashion, you better not be doing apologetics. You better just go back with your little group and build your walls and turn off the internet. Don't touch the world. You got nothing else to do. You got nothing else to do. So I wasn't attacking the English KJV or every Greek New Testament and every English Bible. I was simply pointing out the reality of where they came from. And when you can point out the historical reality and that's interpreted as an attack, I agree. It might be the most telling part of this interview because only one of us can deal with the facts and he can't.